Today's topic will be the development and consequent fallouts. And this deliberation will be navigated through the definition of development, historical perspectives, inventions that spurred development, effects of development, and mitigation strategies. Development has two connotations. One is the social development, other is economic development that refers to the per capita income and growth. The process of earlier process of development was really the top-down approach. The blueprint was being prepared by the people in the locus of power, and it was passed on to the people down the line, and there was no participation of the community as such. What happened really, whenever there was any development in even the remote areas, its maximum benefit was backed by the outside commercial enterprises instead of going to the people, inhabitants of that particular area. Inhabitants were merely employed as laborers, and they were paid low wages, and the maximum benefit went to the pockets of the outsiders. And this is the case also, whenever their dams were built, people were just evacuated, and their livelihood was really deprived, that was snatched away. Even the compensation was paid to the landowners. It was not going to the real inhabitants of that particular locality. And the entire ownership was in the individual hands. That is the typically of the capitalist system. In the historical perspective, then it began the Industrial Revolution that was really marked by the increased output of the machine-made goods and services that began during the 1700s. Now, 1800 onwards, coal and steam really came into being, and they drove the industry machines. By 1800, in fact, there was the new form of energy, that is gasoline, and the internal combustion engines were operating there. Edison, Marconi, they made several inventions in terms of bulbs and phonograph, and Marconi really revolutionized the communication across the globe. Let us see the background. In fact, many inventions occurred during that period, and they spurred the industrialization, and particularly beginning with the agriculture. DDT was synthesized in way back in 1874. That was used as pesticides, and ammonia was discovered by the Fritz Haber, and that is one of the ingredients for the production of the urea. Many inventions happened during 1930 and 1960s. And the case may be referred here as the high-yielding varieties of cereals, because millions of population was to be fed. And that's why it was very much required for the enhancing the productivity of the crops. And the high-yielding varieties of cereals were introduced, though there was the huge demand for the chemical fertilizers, and methods of irrigation was also quite intense, and the modernization of the technology also came into being for the enhancing the production. Though this productivity really increased in three grains: rice, maize, and wheat. Now, what happened really behind this, in fact, development history or the trail of the development, there were many effects. And these effects were on the every dimension, starting with the economic dimensions. That is, the new inventions and development of the factories came into being. Increased production and high demands for the raw material arose. Growth of the worldwide trade that happened. Population explosion, and accompanied by the expanding labor force. Exploitation of mineral resources to feed the millions of people or exploding population. Highly developed banking system and investment system came into being. Advances in transportation, agriculture, and communications were quite witnessed. It has also social effects in terms of the requirement of the cities, expansion of middle class. Harsh conditions also prevailed for the people who were in the urban areas. Some people got the standards of living, nice standard of living, creation of new jobs because of the expansion of the industrialization, and there was encouragement to the introduction of the technological aspects. It has also touched the political arena also, because of so many labor usage. So the labor laws were enacted, in fact, to end the labor abuses. Reforms were also required for the equal distribution of the wealth, and trade unions were formed for the bargaining power, in fact, for their own living wages and the living, etc. Many reforms movements were also they took the seat. Reform bills were also presented in the parliament. It touched the environmental dimension also. It led to the pollutant load in the air. It really polluted water. Global warming is quite rampant and a global concern here. Forests and desertification, biodiversity loss. Mining had also many hazards here, and people were exposed to them. New forms of energy, in fact, because gasoline came into being. Initially, the coal was used for the bulk electricity generation and the cooking gas, and natural gas was for heating purpose. But petroleum was largely used for the transport as a transport fuel. What happened because of the burning of these fuels that led to the coal-induced smoke in London, that is well reported. Sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides are produced from the fossil fuel burning. Even the acid rain, what we refer as that is the sulfuric acid and nitric acid, when the sulfur dioxide and nitric oxide combine with the water and they form the respective acids. They have these acids have very perilous impact on the machinery, on the people and the surrounding. Coal dust and the waste generation was in enormous quantity. This is for the sake of illustration what really the air quality is and what has been stipulated by the Ministry of Environment and Forest. These are the parameters, and they are measuring duration and the residential and the sensitive areas. Accordingly, limits have been fixed by the MOEF. And these pollutants are sulfur dioxide, nitrogen, oxides of nitrogen, PM10, PM2 particulate matter of the micron size 10 and micron size 2.5, and other is ozone. And we have got the heavy metals also: lead, carbon monoxide, ammonia, benzene, benzopyrene, arsenic, and nickel. But one very important thing in this context is I would like to mention that we need to measure 104 measurements in a year, in fact. That is the requirement mentioned in the MOEF stipulation. And if it is done by the manual measurements, it should be twice a week for 24 hourly basis. But majority of the industries now, they have really installed the real monitoring stations, and they are capturing the data at the interval of 15 minutes to 30 minutes, and they are compiling on the daily basis, reporting on 24 hourly basis. Then we can generate any amount of data in any form, and we can just monitor the progress of these pollutants in the atmosphere. One more point is here that in the stipulation it has been mentioned that we should comply at least by 98% of time, and the 2% time, whatever is there, it is not meant for the consecutive days. It may be on the different days. So even 2 days non-compliance is not permitted. Consecutive 2 days non-compliance is not permitted. This is mentioned in the stipulation of the MOEF. Now, the water is another critical resource that has really suffered. It is a great casualty, in fact, because pollution has become a grave concern in the aquatic body. Industrial wastes were really dumped without any treatment. Many rivers ceased to flow. Since the urbanization was along the rivers and waste was dumped directly to the river without any treatment, these effluents were laden with the heavy metals, and they were discharged. They were quite injurious to the health of the fish and aquatic animals. Damming and diversion of the rivers also that affected the quality of the water body. Agrochemicals really reach to this water body because of the surface runoff along with the water. And it is also very, very alarming and critical thing that pollutants really contaminated the aquifers also. They percolated down to the aquifer. Now, this is a very typical case here, MOEF stipulation for particularly for petroleum oil refinery. This is presented to you. And according to industry, this stipulation is different. This is just indicative of the oil refinery stipulation, pertaining to oil refinery stipulation, and the many parameters, particularly pH, oil and grease, suspended solids, biological oxidation demand, and the chemical oxidation demand, phenols, sulfides, cyanides, total gel dot nitrogen phosphate. Gudiya? Hello? What happened? Really, actions to control pollution in river. So it was really required for the avoiding the sewage treatment directly, dumping directly into the rivers, because the sewage treatment was very much required for checking the treatment. In fact, the checking were containing the treatment followed by the discharge. And for this purpose, National Water Quality Monitoring Program was launched. The river stretches were categorized in the 5 classes, particularly on the basis of BOD. Up to 5 ppm of BOD, there is no problems. But there were the priorities decided, that is the above 5 ppm. There were 5 priorities decided. Priority 1 that contained the BOD level exceeding 30 ppm, while the second one was a 20 to 30 range, and priority 3, 10 to 20, priority 4, 6 to 10, priority 5, 3 to 6. And there were as many as 351 stations they were installed for the treatment. And the CPCB also reported higher concentration of zinc and nickel in Yamuna River. The Ganga Action Plan is very, very relevant in this case, because that is the river which houses around 40% population of India, and it is really traveling at more than 2,500 kilometers and terminating into the Bay of Bengal. What happened during its journey, for such a long journey and inhabiting so much population, the influence of industries and municipal sewage, they were directly being dumped into the river. This particular plan was launched, GAP, Ganga Action Plan was launched to reduce the load of these pollutants, particularly sewage and other general waste were also reaching the body of the water. The monitoring committee was formed under the chairmanship of the Professor G.K. Menon, and it was decided to restore the water quality to the bathing level. Bathing level, particularly BOD, becomes 3 mg per liter, that is 3 ppm. And dissolved oxygen is maintained around 5 ppm. And total coliform 10,000 per 100 ml, and fecal coliform, because that is the very common contaminant of the pollutant of the water body, that is coming from the fecal system of the human being, that is 2,500 per 100 ml. It was decided, this limiting range was decided. In fact, regarding dissolved oxygen, I would like to mention that whenever the level of the dissolved oxygen falls below 3 ppm, that is termed as the stress level, then it starts affecting the aquatic animals and aquatic organisms. Now, during the development course, that imposed many challenges, and people and countries came out with the mitigation strategies as well. And the global warming, that is a very well-known fact, and that is a global concern. And generally, whenever temperature is around 33 degrees centigrade, it is habitable, and without which Earth will not be inhabitable. Now, even earlier also greenhouse gases existed in the atmosphere. Here is the layer of this one, the GHG, in fact, and this is the general science that the solar radiation is falling on the Earth. It is reflected back. Some part of it is Greenhouse gases are absorbing, another is returning to space because of this scattering. But what is the matter of concern here, that greenhouse gas concentration has increased over a period of time. Particularly, the industrial period has added plenty of the greenhouse gas concentrations into the atmosphere. And because of the higher concentration of the GHG, they absorbed more heat and reflected back to the earth. That led to the rise in the temperature of the earth. This is the simple science that is advocated, that has been prescribed for the greenhouse gas effect. Now, the various gases are there. Particularly, they are having the varying global warming potential, and they are carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxides, and the fluorocarbons. It may be hydrofluorocarbons or the carbon-containing fluorocarbons, and sulfur hexachloride. Now, it has reported in the US EPA, that the contribution of these GHG gases, the carbon dioxide tops the list, followed by the methane 20% and fluorocarbons around 14%, and the nitrous oxide around 6%. Now, the causes of global warming is very well known, very well witnessed, and the world is suffering. In fact, rapid industrialization has brought about, that has really resulted in the emission or the discharge of the many GHG gases. Population explosion, of course, is the first and foremost factor behind all these causes. That has led to the depletion of natural resources. Many natural phenomena are also adding to global warming. Modification of the ecosystem has occurred. Its effects include increase in sea levels, increased intensity of the extreme weathers, significant change in pattern of precipitation, and modification of the trade routes because of the availability of water and the really turbulence. Glacier retreat is the major concern. Mass extinction of the species has happened in the past, and it continues so. Increase in the range of disease vectors. Now, spread of diseases, increased probability and intensity of the droughts. Economic consequences, it is impinging the economic consequences as well, because the economy is dependent on the many natural resources. The loss of biodiversity is quite a big concern today, and the destruction of the ecosystem. And its impacts have spread on these areas, particularly health, forest, rangeland, water resources, deserts, polar regions, mountains, agriculture, coastal zones, and international boundaries also affected. What could be the mitigation strategies? Because these are happening. And whatever is in hand of the human being, in fact, because the mitigation has to be undertaken. Regarding the GHG emission reduction, to enhance the sinks, reduction in the concentration of the GHG, and to enhance the sink, that is the absorption capacity. And the carbon capture and storage is one method, that is the carbon sequestration. Energy efficiency and conservation is another way to reduce the GHG emissions. Proper urban planning may really alleviate the burden of the GHG. Building design has to be changed, and use of passive solar buildings need to be undertaken on the large scale, though it is happening, but it has to be undertaken on large scale, and the introduction of the renewable sources for the heating purposes. Now, transport is also undergoing change, because plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, they are coming in India, and they are spreading globally also. They are being really produced globally. Now, shift from air transport to truck transport to rail transport, these are the systems where we can really reduce the possibility of, or reduce the concentration of GHG emissions. Of course, increased use of biofuels, they can be blended up to 20% of people. So far, it can be blended around 20%, but biofuel, ethanol, and all that, they are also added to the petrol, that is the gasoline. Now, what could be the policies for the mitigation of the global warming? That is the Kyoto Protocol. It contains carbon emission trading, carbon tax, population control, and out of that, CDM is a quite important instrument for the controlling the GHG emissions. Of course, population is one factor because behind everything is anthropogenic. So it has to be controlled, it has to be stabilized, particularly in Southeast Asia. This is the major concern. Deforestation, the fact sheet has been presented by the ICFR impact. That is saying up to this level, 24.62% of geographical area is the forest. Now it is intended to increase up to 33% level. Northeast has reported the loss of the cover around 1020 square kilometers. So it has to be contained. The deforestation, this decline is caused by natural calamity and shifting cultivation is there. Deforestation is also resource that has increased over a period of time. ICFR has also reported nearly 350,000 forest fires during 1 year. That is a matter of concern. And it is also estimated that by 2030, 40 to 64% of the forest cover may be affected by the climate change. This is the really serious concern for India as such. Forests in the spread across the various states, they are also to be affected by this one, deforestation. Causes of deforestation include human population growth, agricultural expansion, and the land required for resettlement. And this is accompanied by the rising infrastructure requirement, grazing and ranching is there, fuel and wood charcoal utilization, and the largest scale timber exploitation. And of course, the atmospheric pollution is one of the major factors, one of the major causes of the deforestation. Now, desertification is another phenomenon, another aspect that is impacting badly. And whenever we say that it is the moderate levels, 20 to 25% of the biological productivity of the land is lost. While in case of severe desertification, the loss could be around 50% or more. Again, it is a matter of concern that the anthropogenic region is the major reason of behind all these desertification and deforestation and everything. Now, this is taken from this one. This is regarding the causes, effects, and solutions of the desertification that I have taken US EPA site, and it is worth to refer. Now, what the earth will look like in case of desertification, the soil erosion is quite serious. Sun-baked and cracked soils will be there, loss of plants and animals, gullying, and that is ripples will be there, dry rivers will be there, growth of desert, increase in sands and storms, and flash floods may be happening very often. Now, then how to measure the desertification? Several parameters have been added. Again, we have taken from the US EPA site. In fact, one is the physical indicators, so that is related to decrease in soil depth, and there are various sub-dimensions in this category. Now, another is biological indicator, which covers the vegetation and animal and their impacts due to the impacts of the desertification on these factors. The third one is the social and economic indicator that pertains to change in land use and water use, and there may be change in settlement pattern, change in population, change in social processes, conflict between groups because of the scarcity. Biodiversity facts is also a matter of concern. And the humans are modifying Earth's surface through irrigation, swamp reclamation, fertilization. And the other aspect is also there. Many unoccupied regions are also being occupied by the expanding population. Owing to such things, there is the destabilization. And because of the destabilization, human beings also suffer. Global human population growth amounts to around 83 million annually, that is 1.1% per year. And particularly this uh, growth of the population is in the Asia region, that is more prominent. And starting with the 840 million, that is way back in 1800, and we are now 7.9 billion by the turn of 2020. So it is such a phenomenal growth in the population, and this is really triggering every possible impact, that is adverse impact on natural resources and the associated phenomena. Living Planet report I have really taken from the Living Planet report 2020, just for sharing with you that it is tracking around 21,000 species, that is having mammals, birds, fish, and reptiles, and it is reporting the changing state of biodiversity. It has brought out that even in the monitored species, 68% fall is there, and in this tropical region, the decline is quite serious, and it's very threatening. And human beings are overusing biocapacity by at least 56%. Adverse impacts in marine ecosystem. Biodiversity loss range has been reported around the minus 24% to minus 94%, that is the temperate to tropical regions. IUCN has also presented 600 seed plants have already been extinct. They have become globally extinct. It is a serious, it is a very bad situation. Mining has many hazards that is imposing from the textbook. It has been taken that the minerals have got the attention of the commercial forces because, and exploiters because of the rich ores are there, rich minerals are there in that area. Though it has been stiffly opposed by the people, but it has continued because of the even economy also, even for the welfare of the people as well. But it has really brought about certain impacts, bad impacts on the people of that particular area or the inhabitants of that particular area who have been deployed as a labor force. Particularly chromite mines in Odisha have nickel and cobalt. And hexavalent cobalt chromium is known for its carcinogenic property. Due to mechanization, many people have been retrenched because machines have been added, so even they have lost the job also. Most of the workers are hired on temporary basis, and even the personal protective equipments are not provided. Hexavalent chromium mining area is released in the Brahmani river. So that is a matter of concern because that will affect the aquatic body and the animals of that particular aquatic body. Another mining hazard is in the form of dust because the particulate matter, but 2.5 as well as 10 micron size, they are generated in huge quantity because of the continuous pulverization and the mechanical activities. Chromium is going into the water and it is causing dermatitis, rhinitis, and bronchospasm, that is the lung disease, and pneumonia. Even many toxic effluents are being added to the water body. Irony is that mines are the only source of livelihood. So it is compulsory to engage them. But the only thing is we have to take care of uh, these people in terms of the PPE, in terms of their occupational health and occupational safety. What happened because of the fear of the job, they have not reported the diseases and they continue to suffer real under that problem. Mining sites are not restored properly and they are kept as the unrehabilitated. That is the another persistent threat or persistent hazard left to the people. Even forests are getting destroyed due to mining. People are losing forest produce for sustenance and the medicinal plants they use for treating various elements in the traditional systems. Now comes really that is the core issue, in fact, the participatory development, because the blueprint prepared by the top-down approach has not really yielded any results. What has happened that we have to take the people along. They have to be made the part of the development in identification of their problem, planning, implementation, and evaluation of the outcomes of their actions and their ideas. Now, this is the particular case where it was really employed in the decision making in the Tamil Nadu forest. Many NGOs and government agencies use this approach to improve the life of people. And this particular case was the coastal wetland mangrove conservation management that is projectly, and these projects are jointly operated by Tamil Nadu Forest Department and NGO and the MS Swaminathan Research Foundation. In this participatory development that is really enabling, and the case history has been referred in case of Hirulaj, who were just foraging for rats and paddy seeds from the rat holes. And they foraged in the mangroves for fish, shrimps, and crabs. They were employed by the rich farmers for harvesting coconuts. For improving their life, village development and mangrove council was formed, and they were recognized under the scheduled tribe. And because of this, they got several facilities. Their nets were, the cast nets were introduced. They were trained for using them, and the scheduled tribe can collect forest produce and fish in mangrove. They were permitted to collect for their livelihood. And these people really restored the degraded mangrove, got the benefits out of it, and people felt the sense of the ownership and managed the resources well for their livelihood. This is a glaring example of the participatory development that emanated from bottom to top. And they have got their livelihood, they have got their dignity, they have got their well-being. Some of the references I have really taken, and the study material of IGNOU has really given him a lot of information. And IGNOU, in many courses, they have covered all these aspects. Deforestation and desertification in developing countries by R.K. Pachuri, Rashri, and ITNA. IPCC literature I have consulted, and regarding some of the aspects, US EPA website is very useful information for all of us. And to conclude, it will be incomplete unless I really express my sincere gratitude to team of the SOITS IGNOU as a whole for giving this opportunity to become part of this learning fraternity of sustainability science. Dr. Vaisi Kuman has been in touch with me and given his inspiration, and it is very thankfully acknowledged. And lastly, thanks are due to Learning Fraternity for providing me this opportunity today to share my views and getting their vital inputs. And one more thing is, I really sincerely apologize because the last session I couldn't really take because of some technical glitch I couldn't handle. And for that, I apologize. So with this, I conclude my deliberation today and solicit your vital inputs, because this is the